Hello friends and welcome to my channel where we mainly discuss thrillers on Thursdays, and today I am so excited because I've been non-stop thinking about a couple horror movies, the first movie and its sequel, ever since I watched them, and I just really wanted to come on here and discuss them with you guys. I'll have no spoiler sections and then spoiler sections as well. It was actually someone in the Year of Horror Book Club Discord group who recommended these because I said, I feel like I've seen all the horror movies on Netflix that look decent. Can you recommend anything else? Someone recommended them and now I'm wondering how I possibly have not been interested in seeing these before. So as I said, because I'm going to be talking about two movies, I'm going to first talk about the first movie with no spoilers, then talk about spoilers for that movie, then I'm going to talk about the sequel with no spoilers, and then the spoilers for the second movie. So the movies that I really want to talk about with you guys today are Creep and Creep 2. These are both indie horror movies, and first we're going to talk about Creep with no spoilers, so you don't need to worry if you haven't seen either of the films. But for a brief synopsis, Aaron is a videographer looking to make a little extra cash, and he sees a Craigslist ad where a man is saying, hey, come film me for the day and I'll give you $1,000. So Aaron goes to this kind of secluded cabin in the woods, meets Joseph, and Joseph tells him, hey, I have cancer, I'm going to die, my wife is pregnant with my first child, and since I'm never going to be able to meet him, I want to film like a 24-hour day in the life pretending, you know, I'm hanging out with him so that when he grows up, my son can go ahead and watch this film. And now, not surprisingly, things get very creepy very quickly, and now I'm going to get into some pros and cons again with no spoilers. Now I want to say first, before you just exit out of this video and maybe go turn on and watch the movie, I could see a lot of people, if you did that, maybe ending up hating it, and I want to explain why. Because although this is a horror movie, I personally don't find it very scary. There are a few jump scares and some scary scenes, but overall it's really just a fun horror film. You can tell that the creators of this just love horror, so this is not some sweeping epic, really terrifying journey. The movie's only an hour and 15 minutes, super low budget. Again, as I said, not super scary, but at the same time, what makes the movie so good is Mark Duplass, not sure how to say his last name. He plays Joseph and he's such an interesting character. I cannot stop thinking about him. He's not like any other villain that I've seen in any other horror movie. He's very strange and bizarre. I also learned recently that Aaron is the director of the movie and that it was his first film, and that Mark Duplass, and I'm blanking on what Aaron's real name is, but I believe that they both came up with a story together. In terms of flaws, I did think that there were too many jump scares. Now, it makes sense in the context of the film why there are jump scares, and if you watch it, it will make sense. But at the same time, sometimes it got a little bit old, and it was intended to be a little bit funny, but sometimes it felt like, to me at least, the joke got a little bit old. And there is one other flaw, but I can't talk about it without spoiling it, so I'm gonna wait a second. But overall, I highly recommend both Creep and Creep 2. Creep 2 is, I think, just as good as the first movie, which I'll get into in a second. But if you want a really quick, fun horror movie, I really think this is a movie for horror lovers, not for someone who necessarily wants to sit down and get scared. I highly recommend them. I want to rewatch them right now and go buy all the merch. So now I'm going to get into spoilers for the first movie, so if you have not seen Creep, please exit out now. So one of the aspects about the first movie that really threw me off is I really thought the entire film was going to be kind of a capsule film all set at that cabin. So when suddenly you think that Joseph has killed Aaron and then surprise, Aaron's back in his apartment, I was really thrown off because I just really assumed the entire film would take place at the cabin. And I will say, even though it was a good surprise, at the same time, I didn't find the movie as scary once we left that setting. The scariest moment and eeriest moment, for me at least, was when Aaron walks downstairs and Joseph is standing in front of the door and then he starts like grinding against it. Just that turn and him standing there, even though it's a little bit of a jump scare, it's just so shocking and bizarre that that image just seared into my brain. One aspect that I'm curious about what you guys think is this ending scene where Joseph kills Aaron, because yes, I think you can hear like a lawnmower or something loud in the background to where people might not hear what was going on. You know, him hitting him in the axe of the head wouldn't have realistically made that much sound, but it's so out in the open with so many houses. I just found it a little bit bizarre that absolutely no one saw. So that is what I thought about Creep 1. Now I'm gonna go ahead and talk about Creep 2 with no spoilers. So now getting into Creep 2, it starts off a little bit similar to Creep 1. We have Sarah. She's also a filmmaker, kind of like Aaron, but similar to me, she's got a YouTube channel. And her YouTube channel is targeted around this series called Encounters, where she meets different strange people who ask her to do different things on Craigslist, like a man who wants, you know, pretend he's a baby and she cradles him, things like that. But the series is tanking. She has no subscribers, no viewers, and so when she sees Joseph's ad, same one Aaron saw, saying, "I'll give you $1,000 if you film me for the day," she has a very different reaction when she meets him to Aaron. Aaron's terrified of him immediately versus Sarah is almost excited by the fact that he is so weird because she's thinking, okay, this is gonna make for a really great video. And it's also very different because Aaron, as I said, is very scared of Joseph from the beginning versus Sarah is just like, I don't believe anything that he's saying. There's no way any of this is true. He's just kind of bizarre and at least I can make a good video out of it. So in terms of what I liked and didn't like about it with no spoilers, I found this one a lot more kind of self-aware and funny than the first one. Even though the first one does have some funny moments for me, I found this one, even though I don't know if funny is the right word because it's not like you're cackling the whole way through, but it did just seem a little bit more of a dark comedy to me, which I really like. And like I said, I think this could have easily felt just like the first one on repeat, but because Sarah and Aaron have such different reactions to Joseph, I think that's what works really well, and Sarah's interactions with Joseph are very different and you learn a lot more about him, which I really liked. So I was really surprised that I ended up liking Creep 2 even more than the first one, even though I didn't really love the ending, which I'll get into when I talk about spoilers. The only thing that I didn't like about Creep 2 was that because Sarah doesn't believe anything that Joseph is saying and she's not scared, because you kind of inhabit that character, even though you know you've seen the first movie, you know Joseph's a killer, because Sarah isn't scared, it makes you as a viewer not that scared. And I think Creep 2 would have actually worked well as the first movie, maybe if you're the viewer and you don't know what Joseph is saying is true. Does that make sense? Maybe not. So overall, I really liked Creep 2, loved it more than the first one, but I just wish it would have been a little bit creepier. So now we're gonna get into spoilers for Creep 2, so if you have not seen it yet, feel free to exit out now. So the aspect I'm really looking to hear from you guys is what you think is going on at the ending of Creep 2, because there's so many different ways that you could interpret it, and I don't think it's very black and white. And granted, I haven't gone and read interviews with the director or the cast, so maybe they've explained it online and I haven't seen. But I kind of don't want to know, because since this is a trilogy, I want to be surprised what happens in the first movie. But like I said, the ending where he's dug the grave, I think it could be interpreted in a lot of different ways. One, that he really did stab himself. Two, that like when he pretended to hang himself and he had the harness, it's possible he had fake blood. There's also the scenario that he did really stab her. There's also the scenario where, because you're not really seeing things, that maybe that was faked. I've seen some discussion where people interpret that scene as 100% real, that he did stab himself, he did stab her, she really did hit him. And then I've heard some people say no parts of that scene they faked together, like maybe he faked his own stabbing. And I've also seen some people say that everything they faked just for the purposes of making a good movie. But especially in that last scene where she sees him while she's on the subway and she's wearing the locket, the A&J locket, that I find really interesting. I assume it means that she's somewhat sympathetic to him, and it makes me really intrigued for where the third movie is gonna go. So those are all of my thoughts on Creep 1 and Creep 2. I won't be having a video next week because I'm gonna be traveling for work. I'm gonna be in the like Laguna Beach area of California, which is really exciting. I've never been there before. If you have recommendations for things to do, I have like one free day to do fun stuff and then the rest will be working. But again, if you have recommendations for things to do, that would be super helpful. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the week. Like I said, won't have a video next week, but I'll see you all the following Thursday. Bye.